and get some stuff set up. One of the downsides of streaming from my phone and monitoring on my laptop, of course, is that the laptop isn't lined up at the same time. So, anyways, I am actually working on making the transition to streaming on OBS. Spent actually pretty much, oh, oops, that's a lot of ink. Spent pretty much all day today making overlays and setting up scenes and all that kind of fun stuff. So, anyways, we will see how that progresses next week. I think next week's weekday streams, I'm still going to be doing it on my phone this way, but I will be, I think on Sunday, I will be doing the weekly work wrap up sort of thing on live stream instead of pre-recording it. So that'll be a test run. Anyways, what are we working on today? We are working on a couple more pages of that Zamo the Destroyer, what was supposed to be the reboot from 2013. Now, for anyone who's unfamiliar, Zamo was my very first webcomic back in the MySpace days. So like 2009 to, or 2006 to 2009. And then I guess I was thinking I'd rebooted in 2013 and I drew these 8 pages and then I decided I would do a podcast featuring Zamo instead. But I am now getting ready to do a Zamo book. So I never really did that before with the 100 and some odd comics. So I figured, well, why don't I actually ink this reboot and then I'll come up with some sort of little like coda. And those will go in the book along with the main comics. So yeah, that's what this project is now. These particular couple pages, let's see here, Zamo had initially talked about what's, quote, the dumb monkey who draws my comics. That would be me on the first page, and then a little bit about Georgie, the pet human, on the second page, and then complain about the neighborhood, etc. And now we're getting to Georgie's ex-boyfriend, the guy who was the boyfriend in the original Zamo the Destroyer, Wilhelm, and what was going on with Wilhelm. So these are always kind of fun. Wilhelm and Zamo never got along. So, anyways. And then once I get all that stuff kind of done with the 8-page recap and then whatever coda I'm going to end up drawing, because I then went and I did do a comedy podcast featuring Zamo. I have tons of scripts, so we will be working on illustrations for those scripts afterwards. So Wednesday is going to be Zamo the Destroyer night for quite some time. So we have our typical soulless condo building here. I guess we can give it some railings instead of like a solid wall balcony. Just gives it a little more texture. But yeah, so I mentioned the OBS. That's the plan. In the next couple weeks, I spent all day today making overlays and setting up scenes and whatnot. So actually, was almost late for this stream because I was making some countdown timer videos, which you would think would be really straightforward, but no, apparently it's a pain in the butt. There's probably somebody who's made like a plugin for iMovie or whatever that does it, but I ended up doing a screen recording of the Apple timer, and then mucked with it to give it some different color and whatnot, and put it on a flat background. And Ah, 5-minute timer that took over an hour to do. So floor plans. Okay. I guess I need a speech bubble here. Oh, whoops. Speech bubble is going in the wrong direction. There's Wilhelm. One of the problems, whatever non-photo blue pencil I used back in 2013 is so much lighter than the non-photo blue pencil I use now. Mind you, the non-photo blue pencil I use now is essentially just a blue pencil crayon. I have tested it. It is actually pale enough that it doesn't, if you're scanning in black and white, it doesn't show. But these old ones, I'm looking at my laptop and the monitor, you can all just barely make out that there's some blue shading, but I'd have to hold it up really close. And even then, like I'm wearing my reading glasses and I can barely see those outlines. So yeah, we'll get the occasional thing where I thought Wilhelm wasn't in this drawing. It's okay. We'll just make that corner black, and then nobody will ever know unless they watch this stream. This kind of reflects a little bit the suburb I grew up in, Richmond. When I was a kid, it wasn't entirely single family homes, but it was a lot of single family homes. And then it gradually became more and more townhouses and whatnot, and eventually condo towers. So I don't even know what this floor plan is supposed to be here, but here we'll draw in a toilet and a tub. Um, Clearly, it's supposed to be the one Wilhelm doesn't want to pay for. Oh, oh yeah. Well, I guess I probably shouldn't have this other one right underneath there, eh? Oh yeah. Okay. So then the second page that we'll get to, which is the sixth page of this abandoned reboot, introduces Mr. Heidel, who's the new neighbor that Zamo quite likes. And when I started doing the podcast, Zamo, it took a couple months, but Mr. Heidel became a regular, and Zamo always thought Mr. Heidel was cool and appreciated the fact that Mr. Heidel seemed to think Zamo was cool. Wilhelm had curly hair and tended to wear puffy shirts, kind of wannabe romantic era poet, I guess. And then we have Wilhelm kind of turning crazy stalker type. But later on in the podcast years, it was revealed that Wilhelm moved to Vancouver Island, which actually so did had the whole cast and crew move over to Vancouver Island when I did, which honestly is probably kind of a dumb thing to do. Like, just leave your webcomic where it was already set. Um, but for whatever reason, I didn't want to do that. So, whole gang ended up being well, not the whole gang. The Churchmans moved to the island, but far north, so they didn't really stick around in the show. But that was being they are the neighbors whose house I'm drawing right now. But most of the other main characters, they all kind of moved to the island. Although sometimes that's kind of accurate. I mean, I moved here. Um, had the found out one of the guys I used to work with in the music biz actually lives up in Nanaimo, although we've lost touch, so we don't keep in touch. But definitely, I've heard about similar things in, say, like people moving from Vancouver to Calgary, where a whole bunch of people did that. Kind of, I guess, if one member of the friend group does it, or one member of the family, then you often have multiples, right? But looking back, I think it was a little bit forced to do that with Zamo the Destroyer. I should have kind of left everybody over on the mainland in Richmond, but or had like Georgie and Zamo move, but I'm going back and forth to visit or however. There were other ways to handle it than the way I did, I guess is what I'm saying. But I just realized in drawing this that if Georgie's in the room and the door slams behind, that means that Wilhelm left Georgie. I thought I had designed that to be the opposite, the other way around, but again, I think I've said before um, that I'd kind of forgotten a lot of the details of that I had at the very end of the comic because I'd kind of forgotten this whole segment was even drawn. So I obviously forgot the bit where Wilhelm is the one who slammed the door, but then moved across the street. Guess he regretted it and was hoping to get back in. There's Georgie. And now we're going to do the kind of the dividing lines between the panels and between um, the images and the narration. Now, I've mentioned on my Friday stream with Ricky B, the Rock and Roll Rat, um, these lines between narration and image, I did not really account for in Ricky, but it's starting to become a problem. So I got to think about that this weekend. I may just go in, even just with a marker, and put them in. They do need to be thinner than you'll see. I use the really fat one to do the lines between panels. This is definitely an area where if you looking for a random piece of paper here. Oh, what the hell? This is the user's manual for the document camera I've got. But if you do your comic panels with an actual gutter, so you have them drawn like that, then this stuff kind of becomes easier because you'll have your blah 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 and your thing, but then there's, like, very clearly that white gutter in between, right? Whereas the way I'm doing it is I am butting them up against each other because that's kind of how that's actually how I always did it with Zamo, back in the day, and then that's how I do it with Ricky, and, it's how I did it digitally with Noah's Archipelago, but it does, sometimes you have to watch the thickness of your lines is kinda what I'm saying, I guess. Um, anyways, I just make sure that I use a much thinner nib for, dividing off the narration and yeah, like that, because that kind of still will have it, flow together, but there's some of the stuff that I've drawn with, the Ricky where I kinda have to make some decisions a lot sooner than I thought about that. 'Cause some things, it kinda gets a little confusing there. I might even I don't know, I kinda wanna have, like, a darker, shadowy floor kind of feel. And I'll give her a speech bubble around good riddance. Sometimes when it's only, the one character in the frame, I kind or in the panel, then I kinda go like, "Yeah, I don't really need to draw a speech bubble," but sometimes it just looks better if you do. And you can see I kind of like to what I didn't really plan appropriately for there is I do like to run my text right up against. So I would probably, when I scan this in Photoshop, I'll probably just go, just shrink that line of text just a little bit so that it fits a little better. But, anyways, it's like I think I've mentioned this. Here it's not too bad because it's in the side, but um, some of the other pages I have that, like the credits, way too right in the middle because I think I was planning to post the pages separately over the course of 8 weeks or something on the website, so, yeah, anyways, that didn't end up happening, but it meant that, that's really way too tight. You find your mistakes. It's kinda how it goes, and we'll just kind of go around that way. Um, Now back to drawing. I will say that with Zamo the Destroyer, you can tell this is a lot more text for anyone who sees this stream or the other couple Zamo streams and my Friday Ricky B. Rat streams. This is probably easily twice, maybe 3 times the amount of text that I put on a single page for Ricky, and much tighter and denser with panels. So, nowadays, I'm a little more mindful of that and, having spacing. I mean, it can work, like, the amount of panels there on this one page in particular kinda work because it will tend to make it feel a little claustrophobic, which jives with the idea of, Georgie's ex-boyfriend who Zamo can't stand wanting to move into the neighborhood and all that. So, what is we got here? But it is something to kind of consider when you're designing your own comics. How much, breathing room do you want or not want, etcetera. I think that's also, where, some people will draw each frame separately and draw it really big and then shrink it and jigsaw it together afterwards in like Photoshop or whatnot. And when you do it that way, that does give you a lot more leniency because you can draw it way bigger and then, you tighten things up in after the fact. And then your art looks a lot tighter and you're not constrained by, depending on the size of your hand and the way that you naturally want to letter or whatnot, there's kind of a minimum size that's comfortable to draw at. So I want to kind of make this clear that this is a box full of kitchen crap, but not really to have to draw every bit of the box of kitchen crap. There's Zamo being very displeased. A lot of this is gonna vanish when I do that fat line there. That's why I was kind of saying about watching spacing, but something I'm a little more. I guess I must have been cognizant of it at the time, but I was probably using much thinner nibs and whatnot. And I think at the time I drew this, I was mostly inking with markers, not dip pen. So I kind of went back and forth a few times over the years I was working on Zomo. I drew their heads way too big. Even in the blue underdrawing, the head's that big. And then the body's really small, but I'll just fix it on the fly. I guess this is kind of a de facto, what's that viral thing? Roasting my own work type of idea. Here we can see he always wears one of those like fluffy Victorian era cravat things. Hi, hello, Omar. Well, thank you. Glad you're liking it. I think these are supposed to be icicles. Hi, Allison. How's it going? Oh, and thank you, Heba, for your comment on my nails. Yeah, when I started live streaming at the beginning of this year, it's like, if I'm gonna have my hands on camera, I should probably actually do my nails once a week. Thanks. Okay. So there we have the Zamo being not too friendly. Kind of pissed off about the Wilhelm situation. Is this a comic? Yes. It's kind of related to a webcomic I used to do a long, long time ago back in the MySpace days called Zamo the Destroyer. And I'd never gotten around to doing like a book of those comics. And a couple, well, I guess a couple months ago now, Wow, I got to thinking, well, maybe I should have a look through and see what I got and whatnot. And I found this 8-page um, little arc, which I guess was supposed to be a reboot of it in 2013, and then I didn't actually do it. So I was like, well, maybe I'll do the book now. And I figured, well, I might as well ink this as like a little coda for that book. So, and then those characters, I then did a comedy podcast, which was narrated with this cartoon voice I used for Zamo. And I have dozens, actually a couple hundred episodes of that from, yeah, I think 2014 through 2022. So I'm going to then do a book of using those podcast scripts as like short stories, and I'll do illustrations for those. So I guess in that sense, that part won't really be a comic per se, but based from a comic. So yeah, it's- now we separate the next line and we're getting down there. So kind of the premise with this these 8 pages is Zamo, the iguana here, narrating what's been happening in the neighborhood to kind of catch people up to speed, so to speak. So it'll kind of work as a decent bridge in between the old comics when that book comes out and then when I do the short story podcast scripts. Um, so yeah, it's interesting for me to see comparing these old comics and the Zamo drawing style to what I do in my more recent comics, like Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat, which I'm working on a graphic novel on my Friday night streams. But the drawing style, very, very, very similar. Other than if this was Ricky, I would probably black this in. Like the Ricky stuff tends to be a lot darker and more detailed, but very similar otherwise, which is always funny because I think a lot of artists are like, we don't really, I don't have a style. How do I develop my style? And then you kind of realize, years later, like, oh, like the things that always look the same when I'm trying to make it different, that's my style, right? So, anyways, Georgie's teaching some dumb intro painting classes. The funny thing, see that Georgie as the main human character was supposed to be a full-time artist, professional painter. So it's kind of funny actually to see the comment about teaching painting classes. I'm actually talking with a friend of mine who works at the local arts council. I'm probably in the fall going to, I might actually be early 2027, but I'll be starting to teach some comics and graphic design classes. So, which I didn't think I was ever going to do, but you know what? I've been asked, so is she doing? Trying to figure out how exactly I drew Georgie with like with the paintbrush because the little bit I can see in the blue outline doesn't really make much visual sense, but we'll just go with it. Oh, I was thinking 2013. You wouldn't actually set your easel that frickin' high. I guess if you're working on the very bottom phrase, but otherwise, you want the middle of the painting to kind of be at your eye level. But we're just gonna go with that because that's what was drawn originally. You can kind of tell that back then I did not use an easel when I was painting. Or maybe she's just really far away from it. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. Anyways. Course, in the previous couple pages, Alma was complaining about this community center across the street with the pool and whatnot, and how Georgie now joined that gym. What am I looking at? Oh, there we go. Um, it kind of makes sense that Georgie is teaching her painting classes at the community center across the street from the house, which would annoy Zamo even more because then Georgie doesn't commute anywhere. She just walks across the street to work. What on earth is Zamo doing? Trying to figure out what on earth. I don't know that shows up. I don't think it does on the camera, but I have Zamo basically with two weird paddle things in each hand. You know what? We'll just go with that because I don't know what it's supposed to be. So that would make sense that Georgie doesn't know it's supposed to be either. But that is one of the perils if you're picking something up that you drew more than 10 years ago. It's like, what is supposed to be going on in this frame? I have no idea. That's just Georgie sitting on the sofa by herself. Oh, she's knitting. Okay, that's what she's doing. It's like, "What is this?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah." Especially at this scale, it's kind of hard to figure it out, but that, I think, makes it a little easier to tell. Bowl of popcorn or something there, and watching TV. Your email. Okay, it's on office. I see. Forget when I first had the idea in Zamo that Zamo uses the eraser end of a number 2 pencil to type with, but, I remember that being kind of an ongoing joke. Hey, thank you, am I seeing that right? Arsinia? Yeah. Actually make the text a little bit bigger on my laptop so I can read people's names. And thank you for your kind words. Memory serves, I think the laptop that inspired this drawing was my 2008 MacBook Pro. It's a 17-inch back with, so it was like freaking huge laptop. I still have it, and it's not the greatest by any means, but I still have it, and it still runs. It has a whole bunch of ports down the side, including FireWire 800. Kinda miss FireWire, that was pretty rad. Of course, if I was drawing this exactly like my MacBook, it had, like, about that much on either side of the keyboard that was where the speakers were. But it doesn't have to be exact, we'll just get the rough idea of a big, thick, old laptop. Draw a guy here who looks like the ex-boyfriend Wilhelm. Right. We are almost done this page. All right, so now we're going to set this one aside and go and work on the next page. So we go from Zamo complaining about a lack of Georgie getting out there trying to find a new man, and lo and behold, one has moved in to the neighborhood. Clearly, I didn't trust my abilities with a dip pen that size, or I figured I was going to do everything in fine tip marker, but we have him down here. But we will carry on. So this is Jack Heidel. Um, although I think at this point in the story we didn't know his. Well, I think I always knew his first name was gonna be Jack, sort of a Jekyll and Hyde play on words. But anyways, at this point, Zamo doesn't know his name is Jack. Um, and of course, Zamo being the narrator, that means that the reader doesn't know it. So the reader wouldn't find that out until the book of short stories, I guess. Have him wearing those kind of concho sort of hat vibe or hat band vibe, a little bit like Slash. Not quite as tall proportionally, but you know. I always envisioned Mr. Heidel as looking a little bit like Mick Mars from Motley Crue. The bags under his eyes aren't because he's like some super old dude. It's because he works graveyard shifts, so it's taking a toll on him. Yeah, that rock and roll lifestyle is. It's actually not that long ago, kind of going like, well, how bad is being nocturnal for you? Because I was thinking back in my rock and roll days, I think I've said this on stream before, but where I used to kind of get up around noon, I had a rehearsal space that I used as my studio. I would arrive there somewhere around 2 in the afternoon, start working at about 3 on stuff that time of night would be or that time of the afternoon would be stuff that's kind of brainless, so, editing or whatever, but not creative work. Um, and then, 10 o'clock, go for a run, come back, get changed of my sweaty clothes, and then it would be that was when I started writing, about 11 p.m. at night. Um, record vocals at 2 in the morning if it was a vocal tracking kind of night, and hopefully head home by 4 in the morning, go to bed by 5, do it all the next day again. So, yeah, it was, the funny thing is, I mean, that will take a toll on your health. No two ways about it over time. But I actually was healthier then than I've been many other times in my life. I'm sure going for a run, you know, if it wasn't a run, then I'd go for a walk. That would be like an hour and a half long. So, yeah, I mean, the exercise I'm sure helped. Honestly, I wasn't eating the greatest diet at the time, a lot of fast food and candy and shit like that. But the years I did that, I lost like 40 pounds in 1 year. It was definitely exercise mostly. So, anyways, part of me was going like, what would happen if I went back to that schedule now? And you look online, it's all this, big scare tactics about how absolutely horrible that is for your health to be working at night and all that. And I'm like, I don't know. The other hand, you do have some of the rock and roll guys where that actually is their life. And yeah, some of them are unhealthy, but not all of them. So I think it depends. Different people have different biorhythms or whatever. Uh, our friend Jack here, he's used to it, but maybe not the best thing for his health. Of course, it seems the worst thing for his health is what he's got in his hand here, but we eventually find out that he's a bartender. That's why he's not seen that much in the daytime. I used to do the podcast version of Zamo the Destroyer. Doing Mr. Heidel's voice is always really rough. He had to be the pretty much the last thing I tracked because voice wise, I kind of based him on Bill Kennedy, who's one of my audio mentors. Bill's passed away now, but he was a big time heavy metal producer back in the day. Like he worked with Megadeth and he also worked with Nine Inch Nails and yeah, whole he's actually mentioned in Marilyn Manson's book. I think Marilyn Manson's kind of afraid of Bill. Bill did not like Marilyn Manson. Never really gave details, but he said it in a tone of voice that was very clear. We're not going to ask any further questions. Um, and by the way, Bill passed away in 2012 or 2013, so it was long before you know, any of the other stuff came out about Manson. But when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I like to give Manson the benefit of the doubt, but I also always trusted Bill's evaluation of people. But Bill had a very. If I do it now, I'm gonna end up in a coughing spell. But basically, kind of sounded like this: big, scratchy, deep voice. Obviously, he used to smoke a lot of cigarettes, and yeah, and that's about as much of that voice as I'm gonna do on here because is it last night or the night before? I think it was Monday maybe, but I got a terrible coughing spell. Maybe it was last night in the first hour or so, but very annoying. And I am wearing a lav mic, so I don't want to inflict that on people. But it's always fun doing Mr. Heidel's voice based on Bill Kennedy, but definitely had to have a glass of water and some Ricola throat candies. around when you did it. Now, trying to figure out what this is, what he's standing in front of. I think that's his garage. Okay, so we'll draw Mr. Heidel's garage. Garages are kind of easy to draw. Visually, Mr. Heidel's not based on Bill Kennedy, though. Not so much, but sound-wise, I definitely kind of borrowed from Bill. Uh, Assuming Mr. Heidel's Benz is black, so we're going to. And I think I'm going to change the license plate at the time was going to be 667 Evil, but let's go. Trying to think of something else that's kind of douchey, but have his license plate say "dumb man." I'll blacken the car with fatter nib. Trying to make some shiny spots that I'll remember to leave out. Probably won't. Will end up not looking at all like a car, but we can always Photoshop things later. Zamo's little nostrils there. Heard a notification, just checked my messages with my brother, and he's sending me a link about a local news story. So that can definitely wait till after the stream. But we are moving along fast today. An hour and 15 minutes, and yeah, we'll probably finish this rest of this page by like maybe quarter after. At that point, I think I would just wrap the stream up early because I'm gonna have only got two more pages of this 2013 um, reboot left to ink, so kind of need them for next week. So otherwise, I don't have anything prepped. But you can tell I kind of didn't line up. But this is where I do have a habit of like, certainly at this point, I was definitely cramming way too much stuff into a single page, um, which is my own fault. But yeah, I think traditionally, like in people usually the ideal would be to draw it twice the size. Um, Now, if you're like me and you only have a regular size scanner, then that becomes a problem. People used to use proportional wheels. At some point, I'll do a tutorial about using one of those. But they used to do that and then use a Xerox machine because they had bigger um, beds. Well, and also back in the day, people didn't have home um, scanners and whatnot. So you'd use the Xerox machine to shrink your art to the final size for reproduction and then take that in. Um, One thing I guess that one could do would be to figure it out in halves. So something like this, right? You might figure out, oh, okay, width wise, I can't go twice this size depending on what size you're printing, but you may be able to do it this way. And then you would just, Frankenstein a bunch of strips together. I have a tendency to not use as big a reduction as I probably should, and as is traditional. Every so often, I think I've mentioned it before on the stream that I've thought about getting a tabloid size scanner. They're about 500-600 bucks. Just trying to see what am I looking at. Okay. Um, One of these days I might, but kind of not in any a great hurry to do that. The main reason for, doing a reduction is that, your art then looks bigger or better, pardon me, when you draw it better when you draw it bigger, um, because you end up, it'll just look a lot tighter when it gets shrunk down, so oops, that has gone over. Actually, that's gonna be the door. I think his door is kinda painted black, so we'll be fine. We will be fine, fine, fine. But that is definitely one of the problems with the really pale, non-photo blue pencils, is that, they do this sort of thing. Envisioning that he's got some gravel under his deck here. That's probably gonna get obliterated when that line goes across, but growing up in Vancouver, I think they still have a lot of these houses, but especially when I was a kid, there are a lot of houses that were built probably in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and, parents would warn us not to rub against the outside of the house because what it had was stucco, and then to protect the stucco, they used to use crushed glass. So if you, fell against the edge of that sort of a house and you put your hand up to break your fall, you probably get, your hand cut up. But there was an early form of recycling, um, and it would have different colored specks in the glass and whatnot, so it'd be really kinda pretty. Because they have green and blue and brown and even sometimes red specks. Um, and kind of made the edge of the house, the side of the house, pretty pretty long lasting. And there's another message from my brother. So oof, hang on, I'm just gonna say hi. I'm on stream. Uh, well, listen. There. There. I guess I could just ignore the dings, but, it's like my brain wants to immediately go and look at them. So, mind you, I don't know. He might not realize I started a Wednesday stream because I used to only stream on Tuesdays and Fridays. So yeah. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I was talking about the crushed glass siding and all that. And the assumption is that this is Georgie's back balcony that Zamo was standing on to spy on Mr. Heidel. Ah, I did it again. I missed the line. Never mind. Ah, happens some days. Some days that happens. I was thinking that that jutted out there, but actually, no, never mind. So, first step. First step to correcting the mistake is to draw on the panels of the door. I mean, it's going to show somewhat, but leave that down. Yeah, that does make it slightly more visible for me. But I got the light like 6 inches away from the side there. All right, so Mr. Heidel's door knocker is based on one I've seen pictures of. It's antique brass, I guess. Looks like a hand holding a ball. Some sort of a joint in right around here. And then the base kind of had a bit of a floral thing. Another notification for my brother. Probably going, if you're on stream, why are you answering my message? Because I can hear the ding, that's why. I've seen some of these where it's like, "Oh, I would love to have one of those brass knockers, but it wouldn't really work on my door." In the house I have currently. In a future house, it might. Yeah, that kinda saved it. I mean, there is a line that I'll probably have to, muck with a bit in Photoshop just to tidy that up. The other thing I noticed, and I should have noticed it before I was lettering, is that is very close to the line with Zamo the Destroyer. It may have been that I thought I was going to have lines only that thick between the narration and whatnot. Now I'm going thicker, whatever. But, there's definitely a very tight, I gotta watch where is the line there. It is there. I think I am just gonna do it that way with this nib because then we know. Actually, you know what? Where this is an opportunity because we definitely don't need those. And here's a prime opportunity where it's hidden in Mr. Heidel's door. So we can just and make it go away. There. Actually, remember when every house had one of these metal letters, mail slots in the door. I mean, granted, they if you got parcels, it was a pain in the ass, but, um, you know, where I live now, it's kind of more of a trying to see what is Zamo trying to do. I'm not sure what the hell Zamo is, showing up under there. Um because it's not a letter. Or trying to pull a letter out, but it's almost maybe got a little camera or something, I don't know. But, anyways, I mean, it is true that indoor letter slots kind of would cause a draft, but then if you have a house of that era, everything caused a draft, so, yeah. Go ahead and assume that the letter slot is in another one of these cross pieces on the panel door, because that makes things a lot easier. Some of the ones of these I saw would also have like a bit of a hammered effect. And that gives a little texture, so we're gonna go with that. I mean, I guess one of the other reasons might have been if burglars were able to get a tool up through the letter slot to try and get at um, to unlock the door or something. And maybe that was why they kind of went away too. But I seem to think it was kind of a little bit more about drafts. Let me go over the outlines of those door panels later on with like a marker or something once everything's dry. Um, just to give a little more oomph. But yeah, who knows? I might actually do it right now too. Well, my earlier prediction about being done at quarter after is probably pushing it because that's only another 5 minutes, and I think we got another 15. But you know, we're certainly not running late tonight, that's for sure. All right. So, I think I mentioned earlier about getting stuff ready to start streaming from OBS instead of just streaming from my phone. But I think what I'm going to start initially will be my Sunday wrap up videos. Last week, I tried putting one over on a different channel, but I think, I don't know. See, the other channel is where I want to put vlogs at some point, but I may actually. So I was thinking, oh, well, vlogs and weekly wrap up kind of go together. I don't know. I may carry that on, but I'm also thinking the weekly wrap ups I'd like to start doing as a live stream, in which case, maybe I'd do it on this channel. I don't know. There. Works. So, blinds are always drawn. Okay, we've got two different panels here, so gotta remember that. I'm gonna draw this window smaller than I originally drew it, so that I know for a fact I've got it all kind of laid out. Figure out what the hell I'm looking at here. I think that's a pickup truck. Oh, I see. Okay, never mind. It's a pickup truck and it's a tarp with or a little trailer, whatever. I think that's supposed to be a tarp, but because I've got him running the lawnmower, I'm just gonna take that out. Mm, Fill that in blacker afterwards. Oh, yeah, I wanted to do kind of a the asphalt driveways that get the fresh coat of blacktop every year. I had relatives who used to do that in Richmond. So I'm just gonna scribble that in, and hopefully I remember before when I get the bigger thing in a few minutes. Some nice black asphalt here, and we'll fill in the driveway is black there as well. And then we are going to be done this page, and I'll show. I will show once again what we did at the beginning, the first page, and kind of quickly flip through probably all the other ones. I'm just going to Photoshop to tidy up that line. Oops. Um, yeah. And we do need to go back to the skinnier nib because I forgot about the whole grass thing. All right. Yeah, I think I'm good. So let's have a quick review. I'll just go and show. This has been the stream of phone notifications going off. I don't know. It's possible that it didn't pick up and nobody else hears that, just me. But anyways, uh, so I'm just going to lift this one, which is still very, very wet. Put it on top of my laptop up there. So going back to the beginning, which would have been a month ago now because we missed 1 week where I was sick. So this was the first page of that 8-page 2013 reboot that I discovered. So Zamo is acknowledging that it's been a while and is complaining about the monkey who draws things. That was me. It kind of references and pokes fun at my music career as Maclu. I just realized I was using a skinnier. I guess because I realized, oh, these are really close together. I have to use the medium nib, not the fat one. So, anyways, that's going to be a little inconsistency, but whatever. By page 2 now we have Zamo talking about what's going on in the neighborhood and referencing the Hoppy, who's the bullfrog, who Hoppy thinks is almost the Messiah. It's a whole thing. Anyways, so we got that and the lab bunny, talking about the neighborhood and gardens that have disappeared from the neighborhood. The neighbors Dave and Bob, and then referencing the Churchmans. And then talking about this new community center built across the street, which annoys Zamo because now there's even more people hanging out in the neighborhood and being annoying. But there's a lot of trees, and Zamo's an iguana and likes climbing, so that's good. And then there's more references to bunnies. Lots more people in the area means there's a street light now, which Zamo senses coming through the curtains, and then reference to humans can't drive. And then talking about Georgie, who is Zamo's kind of pet human. Georgie now works out across the street at the community center, which annoys Zamo because Georgie used to drive across town 20 minutes each way. And now we've got the Churchmans, who are the neighbors next door to Georgie, and all their kids. And earlier, we moved on to speaking of other neighbors that Zamo doesn't like. So Georgie's ex-boyfriend, Wilhelm. Um, because if Georgie's house is here, the Churchmans are here, here's the side street, here's the community center and pool. Right on this corner is where they built a condo building, and Wilhelm bought a condo. So he's right a kitty corner to Georgie. So Zamo's still stuck with Wilhelm coming to hang out. Much to Zamo's annoyance, Georgie is now teaching classes, and then Zamo's trying to get Georgie to purchase a mail order husband, um, so that in theory Georgie will be homeless, not homeless, but home less often. But of course, realistically, if Georgie gets married, now there's 2 humans hanging out, but Zamo doesn't really think about that. Anyways, and then there's page 6 talking about the new guy, Mr. Heidel, who Zamo is very intrigued by and thinks he would make a good husband. And next week, let me just take a peek at what we're drawing next week. Then next week, we've got 2 more pages to ink. One's going to talk about Georgie's brother. And then we're going to have Zamo and Zamo's secret basement lab in Georgie's crawl space. Georgie's house is kind of modeled on a house my aunt and uncle lived in. Did I just put a wet one? Hang on. Just realized. I think the one from earlier today was dry enough. But yeah, must have been. Didn't leave any imprint. But anyways, Georgie's house is based on one that my aunt and uncle rented for like 20 years or something. Maybe not 20, but definitely 10 or 15 years in East Richmond, which is a suburb. Richmond is a suburb of Vancouver, and it was a split level. Richmond, you don't have basements, so what it is like the basement part was just right on the slab, and the rec room was down there, and the laundry room, which had, like a powder room in there, and then you had the foyer from the front door, and then there was you went up, like, 6 steps to the next level, which had the living room, dining room, and kitchen. So you had a crawl space, like, for storage and whatnot. You couldn't stand up in it, but, it would be like, it was about 4 feet high. So you'd have to crawl in there, but that was a huge amount of storage. Anyways, so the idea is and then, of course, from the middle level, then you went up a few like, another 6 steps, and then you had 3 bedrooms and the main bathroom up there, above the rec room. So, I modeled Georgie and Zalmo's house on this. So, the rec room is Georgie's home studio for painting, but that crawl space became Zalmo's secret basement lab. So, anyways, that's kinda where that is, at, and then one of the reasons I don't think it covers it here, it's discussed more in the first podcast when Zamo's plotting to get Georgie and Mr. Heidel together, but Zamo figures Georgie marries Mr. Heidel, moves into Mr. Heidel's house, then Zamo gets all of Georgie's house to her Ig's self, Iguana's own self. But Georgie lives close enough to be on the beck and call for any to serve Zalmo. But anyway, so there's an agenda here aside from the fact that Mr. Heidel's kind of cool. Anyways, so that is 2 more pages done in here. This means I really need because next week is the last week of I'm just gonna leave Mr. Heidel there. Next week is the last week for this 8-page set. So the week after that, I'm gonna need some Zommel stuff to ink. Now, there will be bonus cartoons I'll end up doing for the Treasury of Zommel comics, but until I get everything together, I'm not sure exactly what that'll be, other than I would probably do portraits of each character. Um, but because I've already started compiling the podcast scripts into a Scrivener thing, just raw. So they will need editing and whatnot, but I at least have the data on those. So what we might do next week is start to illustrate, um, 1 or 2, not next week, the week after next. We may start on illustrating those podcast scripts because they will become I don't know, yeah, each one be about a 5-page story, so it's kinda like halfway between diary entries and short stories. Because Zalmo narrates this, and this podcast is supposed to be for Zalmo's friends back home in Colombia to know what Zalmo's up to and whatnot, so, but anyways, we will start working on Zalmo bonus material, the week after next, but we've got 2 more of these pages to do, and then sort of behind the scenes, I can work on getting that first Selma book together, and then at some point, I'll know what bonus cartoons I wanna do to fill it out in terms of character portraits and the front matter and the cover and all that stuff, but anyways, so we are making progress, I guess, is the point. So coming up, tomorrow I am working on 2 pages out of the Noah's Archipelago coloring book that I work on Thursday nights. Next then I don't have a stream on Friday. Normally, I do working on Ricky B, the Rock and Roll Rat, but as I've mentioned a couple times this week, I have an event I have to be at, my parish potluck, so I will not be streaming on Friday night. So then I'm thinking on Sunday because I had said last week, "Oh, I'm gonna stream on Sunday and just do like a casual brainstorming type of thing." I might, um, I might do that. I also, for my weekly wrap up where I just show all the work that I've done in a given week. Um, anyways, I think I probably will stream on Sunday instead of like pre-recording a weekly wrap up. I may stream on this channel, and that way I get to test out OBS and I mean, I did 2 private test streams, but I mean, I get to test out when it's actually going live, and, see how badly that screws up. So, we may be doing that, or we may just pre-record the weekend wrap up. But after that, Monday, we'll be working on Miles. Tuesday, another page, maybe 2 from that Noah's Archipelago, calendar, because I managed to get 2 done last week, which surprised the hell out of me, because the previous ones were it took 2 hours per, so an entire stream. And then, of course, next Wednesday, we've got those last 2 pages from this 8-page wrap-up, um, the lost Zamo reintroduction that never was, and, yeah, so that's it for tonight's stream. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for popping by, and thanks for everyone who showed up in the chat to say hi and whatnot. And we will see you again real soon. So bye for now. Thanks for watching, and bye bye, Zamo. Bye bye, Mr. Heidel. See you next time. Bye.